Hey guys, welcome into episode 6 of this draw along series that we're doing. So in the last episode we got sort of most of this, like I say, this forehead side of things done, and today we're hoping on getting the eye on this side and maybe sort of come down on part of the bridge of this guy's nose. So we're about 5 hours in now, so this is going to be the 6th hour. In total I estimated this was going to probably be about an 8-hour piece. Normally I'm a little bit slow, so sort of in my drawing, so that's sort of why I thought we were going to be about 8 hours. A lot of you might be able to do this sort of size a lot quicker, but I normally find 6 to 8 hours is probably about a normal length of time for me to do a 5x7, especially if it's pretty much the whole board like this one is. So I don't know if you remember in the end of the last one, I said that this area up here I could do with sort of lightening things up. Now once I've put so many layers down with my 9 round liner tattoo needle, there's only so many sort of layers I can do with that one before I find it starts to look a bit odd. So in order to brighten this area up, I'm going to use my X-Acto knife. Well, sort of the X-Acto blade style. Reason for this is because you can get a very, very bright mark with it. Now that's good in itself, but on this sort of area I don't want to go too bright. If I have one that's too sharp or too new out the box, it's a lot harder to get almost like a gentle brightness to it, if that sort of makes sense. I don't really want to go in with some like a really stark white mark, so that's why I'm using a blade that I've had for a while. So I've used this one on quite a few different drawings in the past, so it's not a brand new blade, and then that way it, like I say, it doesn't put down such a bright white mark. I can sort of slowly build up the brightness with it. I've also put it in my slice scalpel tool, so this tool's incredibly light, so again that helps with sort of controlling the brightness. So what I'll look to do is probably finish off this area and then sort of move on to just brightening up the highlights on the top of the head, and then that's when we'll start to move on with the eye. So if you haven't already, I'll put a link down into the description with the links to the previous videos, so feel free to go have a watch of them before you tackle this one. Like I say, I think this is number 6 now, so there'll be 5 other videos linked down there, and it just sort of tells you how we've sort of got up to this stage. I hope you've been enjoying the series so far. If this is something that you like, if you like these sort of live draw-alongs, you know, they are filmed. They're not filmed live in regards to like streaming live over YouTube, but the talk over and the voiceover that I do are sort of live for it. Whereas normally what I do is do the voiceover at the very end, and then sort of maybe speed things up and have it running at a real-time pace. Have it running at sort of 3 or 4 times its speed instead of at a real-time pace. So let me know which one you guys prefer. If you prefer me to, you know, do the voiceover afterwards, if you like this sort of live voiceover view of it. I'm trying to accommodate and do more of what you guys want to see. So making sure to keep, because it's an area that's quite blurred and out of focus, I'm trying to keep my strokes quite close together. I don't want you to be able to see necessary individual first strokes for this part. I'm always got the opportunity to come back in at the end once everything's put in and brighten up things that I feel need brightening up. Just because I move on doesn't mean that every area is complete. I do have the opportunity to go back in, which is always good. So as more bits get put in, as you work further into the piece, you might realise that one area is not bright enough, or you've gone too bright in another area, so you need to darken it up. So just because I do tend to have a tendency to sort of get one area up to a relative level of completion, doesn't mean that that area is then completely done forever. I know some people like to sort of put one layer over the entire board and then sort of go back over with a second layer, but I'm not that sort of person. I can't leave an area like that unfinished, if that makes sense. Probably got something to do with my OCD or something like that, I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to leave that sort of as it is for now. I've just brightened up that area just a little bit. So because, which area are we going to work on? I'm just trying to decide whether to sort of work down here onto the nose or do this area underneath the eye. And to be honest, I've been working on this sort of blurred out texture for a while now, so I'm probably going to come down onto the nose because that's going to be just a little bit more interesting for me. Because you can get, a little bit bored working on certain areas. Zoom that out because it's zoomed in a bit too far. So because it's a more detailed texture, I'm just going to test out a few different tools to see what I'm going to want to use on this area. So I'm just trying to figure out which area is going to be best to start with, whether it's going to be better starting sort of further down and working my way up, or whether I should work up here and work my way down. This is always the tricky part, is working out which way to go. Now there's a lot of different changes in this area. So as you can see, the first sort of comes up and then it ends up curving back round. So I'm going to try and do my best to emulate that. Just move this off here because it keeps making probably some annoying noises for you. Like I've said in some previous videos, don't be afraid to rotate your board around, especially for an area like this where the fur's sort of changing direction, it's going all which ways. So just change your board around with it if you need to. I tend to, when I rotate my board, I tend to rotate my reference photo as well. Just because it saves your brain trying to then sort of turn your reference photo with it, unless, let's just say like now, I'm only doing it just so I know which way the fur's going. but I'm just doing it just to make it a little bit easier to get a certain area in. If I then decide that I'm going to work on it at this angle for a little bit of time, then I'd probably rotate the board just to match that. Like I say, the fur in this area is really a bit all over the place, so it's going to take a little bit of time to sort of plot out where things are going to be. It's a little bit hard as well because I've got a boom arm sort of going straight across here holding my camera, so I'm having to move my head all the way around to try and see what I'm doing. So for this area I'm just using my 1 round liner tattoo needle, just because the fur is quite, like I say, it's going everywhere, it's curving round, so it allows me to just get the direction of the fur in quite easily with this needle. I don't have to, it's not a huge needle, it's nice and small. And then what I can do is I can go in afterwards and sort of make it look a little bit more dense by using a different tattoo needle. You find this on sort of most cats that you do. The fur is just a nightmare when it comes round sort of this area. It just loves to do, well, to be honest, on most animals, any animal that's, dogs are quite similar. Any bit of fur around this area is just an absolute nightmare. So I tend to try and break it down into little sections. And like I say, when I was drawing everything up, putting little marks to show which way the fur is going, the direction, whether it's coming down, whether it's going up, just a little mark here and there just to show that it's a lot easier when it comes to this stage. The fur is going to look really quite odd for quite some time until you sort of get it all in. It's going to look like you're just putting strokes in really random directions. fur in this sort of darker black area just here is really, really short. It's like little dots almost as well. So you try and emulate that as best you can, because that's what's gonna, like I say, give you that form of realism around the nose. And I'm probably going to now come in with something a little bit thicker to do the rest of the fur strokes around this area. So I'll probably try my trusty Magnum needle, but just keep the fur strokes really short. So the good thing about this Magnum needle is that it's got, you probably won't, I think I've tried to show it on camera before, you can't quite see it, but there's 2 layers of needles. So because it's a number 5, there's 5 needles in total, 4 of them sort of running along one way and then 3 of them just sort of sitting on top. But what that means is that with each stroke you put down, you get a lot more lines deposited on the board. And the good thing about that is that it gives an element of randomness as well, which just makes it look a little bit more realistic. I'm just putting my cloth down just so that I can work on it upside down. If I can help it, I don't like resting my hand on the board when I've already worked on that section, just because I feel like it darkens any sort of lightness that I've put in there. So I don't want any sort of dust that's been on the back of my hand, on the back of my glove, sorry, from the board, smudging into those areas and making it darker than what I wanted it to be. I spent quite a lot of time trying to bring those levels up to a good level of brightness, so you don't then want to ruin it by smudging any of the dust from the board into it. So again, it's the same techniques I've done before that you've seen in probably all the previous videos. You're probably sick of me saying it, but I'm just going to lay down this level of sort of faint looking fur, just that under fur, showing the direction. And then we'll come in over the top with some brighter fur. It's important to put in this under fur, and if you don't, your furs are not going to look very dense, it's not going to look thick, it's not going to look overly realistic either. This under fur is quite an important part. You can't, well, you might be able to, but I can't create realism without layers. I think it's quite hard to do. That's not what fur looks like in real life. In real life, fur's got layers to it. So in order to create that in your work, that's what you need to do. So again, I'm not going too bright with these first layers. I am trying to keep them quite subtle. And then what I'll do is I'll look to come in after I've got all these in. Probably with another layer of the same sort of style with the Magnum needle, but I'll probably press a little bit harder just to make them a bit brighter. And then right at the end, I'll add my highlights, probably with the slice tool and the X-Acto knife. Being careful as I come around sort of this eye as well, because I don't want to follow the line quite closely. I don't want to accidentally go too far into it, because then we'll have a bit of a weird shaped eye. It's always good when you've got your reference photo, you know, before you start a drawing or a piece, just have a look at your reference photo, really study it, have a look at the different types of fur texture that you're going to have on your piece. So obviously when we're working on this nose, fur on animals' noses doesn't tend to be long, it tends to be this quite short fur, so the fur that we've got here compared to the fur we've got over there is, you know, a lot different in length. So if you were to sort of put either this fur here over there or that fur style over here, it's going to look a bit odd. You know, you need to try and get the same fur length, fur texture in the right areas. And that again is what's going to help realism in your work. If you want to know a bit more about sort of how I break down a reference photo, I'll leave a card in the corner for you now, or you know, I'll leave it in the description for you. And I've got a video specific on what I do when I'm breaking down a reference photo at the beginning of a drawing, what I look for, how I plan out any challenges that we're going to face. So I need to be careful that I don't come sort of up. If you can see this line of sort of highlight on the reference photo, I'm trying not to come right up to that, because if I do, I'll probably lose where that highlight's meant to stop. So to be honest, I might go in now and just try and boost up the highlight around that area. I don't want to lose it. And we'll blend all this highlight over and back in, so it's not going to be as a straight line like I've just done it there, but that just gives me an opportunity so that I'm not going to lose where that highlight goes. So on this reference photo, it's quite hard to see sort of where this fur goes because it's quite blurred out. on the reference photo. So I've drawn a few, like big cats. I can sort of see where this fur is wanting to go. But what I'd probably recommend, if you're not okay with that sort of thing and you're not quite sure where the fur would go in this area, if you go onto Google or any sort of site that has photos for animals on it, you're not going to copy these photos, but you're going to use them to maybe find out which way the fur is going to go in that section of a cat. So if you have a look at cat photos, you might be able to see a little bit clearer where the fur is heading in those sections. Like do a bit of research into the actual animal that you're drawing. And then the more animals that you do, the more times you'll sort of know which way you're going to go with it. You can even buy books that show you like pictures of animals, dog books, cat books, things like that, and they'll have a lot of photos of cats and dogs, so you can sort of get used to which way the fur goes around the eyes and around the nose and things like that, because you're not always going to have the best reference photo. There may always be bits of that reference photo that don't sort of show what you need them to show. Like I say, just take your time on this part. There's no rush, we're not rushing to complete things. It takes as long as it takes, really. But if you rush it, you may get things in the wrong place, the wrong direction, too long, too short, the wrong highlight, everything like that. But sometimes you just need to slow down, really study, work your way towards the more complicated parts. As you complete other sections, you'll sort of come towards where you're struggling, and that, if that makes sense, I don't even know if what I'm saying makes sense to you guys. In my head, sort of like this area here is going to be a more difficult part because I can't quite tell where the fur's going. Even though, like I say, I've drawn a few cats in the past, I know roughly where it's going. I've worked on this area down here and I've slowly worked my way on all the different areas around it, and now I'm slowly coming up to the area that I was sort of struggling with. But because I've got those other areas in, it's made it just a little bit easier. I can sort of slowly work my way towards it. Most of this is going to have to go back in with sort of highlights anyway. So if they're a little bit messy, it doesn't quite matter. So we're going to start pressing a little bit harder now. Again, just with this tattoo needle, just because I like the texture it gives. You don't always have to sort of change to a different tool. If you want to highlight, you can just alternate your pressure. And then what we'll do once we've done this is we'll probably go in with our X-Acto knife, our slice tool, and really brighten things up. Because again, when you look at the reference photo, this is an area that's quite bright. It's one of the brightest areas on the reference photo. You can see we're slowly starting to build up that brightness. Again, not going sort of overboard with the length of fur that we're putting in, because the length of fur isn't changing. It's still quite this short fur. And as much as I hate areas like this because of how complex they are, they're actually quite fun to do. It really makes you think about the direction of the fur, the type of animal you're doing, and it gives you, it's not necessarily easy, but it's just fun to do. As much as the headaches it causes me. So I know this area just here is still a little bit dark. We will come to that. I really love working with these Magnum tattoo needles. You know, I used to only use the round liners before I found out about these ones, and I used to splice the round liners and sort of make them look a little bit like this, but having it where it's actually designed for that is a lot better. I find they work really well with animal fur. So I definitely recommend getting some of these if you're sort of doing animals, or they work really well for wildlife, especially because in the wild a lot of the animals that you're doing, they're not sort of, the fur doesn't look perfect, it's not necessarily straight, it's a little bit more messy than what pet portraits are, for example, because you wouldn't have, sometimes you'll find with animals such as dogs or cats or people's pets, the animals are quite well groomed, they're not as disheveled as what you'd find, let's say, in the wild. So we're just going to go back in now and add those sort of really bright highlights sort of along this area and along this nose. And again, to do that we're going to use the X-Acto knife and slice tool. If you want to learn a bit more about slice tools, again, I'll down in the bottom in the description I'll put a link to some different videos, one of which will be how to use the slice tools, all the different tools that I've tried out, and it might just give you an idea of, if you're going to purchase them, the sort of marks they do, what the different blades are like, the different tools you can get to put those blades in. You know, Slice were very kind. They sent me quite a few different tools to try out. So, you know, if you are interested, have a watch of that video. And if you do want to buy anything, there's a 10% off code, whether you're in the UK or the USA, down in the description. Just make sure you try and use the right one. Don't use the UK one for the US website because it just won't work. So I've put a little USA mark and a little UK mark next to the relevant ones. But have a watch of that video, and it might show you the different blades that you might want to try. I find they work really well because I've used, when I was first starting, I used the steel blades quite a lot, but I found that I was having to change them probably about, to keep them nice and sharp, probably about minimum once every artwork. You know, normally I'd probably get through a few in just one artwork, but with these ones, you know, this one that I'm using now, this is my more blunt, sharp X-Acto knife blade, but I've been using this since I got it really, so on about 4 or 5 different pieces. I have changed it now in my other tool, this one over here, just because that's a nice sharp one, so if I do want to get any fine detail I can use that, but sometimes I just want that nice slightly more blunted look. So this one's still going strong, to be honest. So now I'm just being very almost deliberate with the marks that I'm making. I'm taking my time and really concentrating on where I'm going, just to slowly build up this brightness across the bottom. Like I said, I don't want to go too bright too quickly. I knew we wouldn't get onto the eye in this video. I'm so bad at predicting how long things are going to take me. I thought, oh, I'll quickly do the nose, I'll get the eye done as well. Yeah, it's not going to happen. I think the best we can hope for is to get the fur on this nose finished. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm always pulling my knife towards me. I'm never sort of pushing it away, and that's why I have to rotate my board quite a lot. I'm not going to sort of give you an example of pushing away because I find that it tears the board quite a bit, like you get quite a jagged looking line. The only time I tend to do it is if I'm using a tool with a sort of rounded point to it, if that makes sense. It's quite rare that I'll ever push away. I'll always prefer to rotate my board before I look to do that. said, this area just takes a lot of time. You know, I don't want to rush this area. It's going to be one of the sort of focal points, this and the eye, where your eye is going to be drawn to. So don't really want to rush it. So we're just now sort of working on this area, sort of bringing these highlights over. But we don't want to make it too bright because we don't want it to compete with the brightness that's over here. So again, a lot of port rotating, just to make it easier for us. We're still using this more blunted blade. It's not my, like I say, my sharpest one, just because I want to give a nice soft highlight over a really stark sharp one. Slowly coming along. Just have to sort of try and work out this area now. I'm thinking I might need to go brighter down this, down the outer aspect of the nose, because now I'm putting in these, I wouldn't call them highlights, sort of mid-tones. They're sort of similar levels of brightness as to this stripe that's going up the side, but I want that to be even brighter, so I'm probably going to have to go back in and brighten that up. Making sure to leave that black area there that's on the reference photo. Don't want to accidentally fill that in. If you do something like that, if you let's say I accidentally filled that area in with fur, just because let's say I wasn't paying attention or something like that, or I got a bit confused on my reference photo. If you just use, you can get some India ink. Scratchboard do their own version, ampersand. That's like a scratchboard touch-up repair ink, and all you do is add that area in and sort of re-darken it up, and you can go back to black. However, the scratches that you've made might still be there because you've scratched into the clay, so you might be okay if you go nice and lightly with your scratches and sort of build them up. If you put in quite harsh, hard scratches, then there is a chance that you may leave almost like score marks in the clay that you won't be able to get rid of, but they will be blackened, there will be black score marks. So on an animal like this, especially animals, sometimes you can just hide that in there because it's it just looked like black fur, if that makes sense. So it's not the end of the world. You can repair things and sort of hide things and mask it, but I always find it's better if you just pay attention and sort of get things in the right place to begin with. But I have done it before and it's easy done. You can just sort of like get into the zone and just be putting scratches down and think you think you're somewhere else on the board, or think you're a little bit further over, and before you know it you've filled in an area that shouldn't have been filled in. So it is easily done. Okay, so I'm quite happy with how that's turning out at the minute. So for this last sort of 10 minutes, we're probably just going to go in and try and brighten up sort of the section down here. And all I'm going to do with that is get my sharper X-Acto knife blade and just press a little bit harder. Still need to fill in this area of black that we've got just there. To be honest, I keep forgetting about that, so what I'll do is I'll fill it in now. Okay, so we're probably going to leave it there for this session. We've sort of got most of the nose in. As we sort of come down onto this section, we'll probably adjust a few of the little bits in here, just sort of blending in a little bit more as we sort of like come down under the nose. Obviously, when you compare it to the reference photo, this area needs lightening up quite a lot. So we'll probably tackle that once we've sort of done just around it, just so that we can judge the highlights off each other. So that's the sort of end of this one, end of episode 6. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. Like I say, if you haven't already, check out the other videos that we've got sort of leading up to this one. I'll leave links to them down in the description. So like I say, I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you again in the next one.